So I have a confession. I have to be honest. A lot of where I've gotten today is because of today's guest. I kind of stumbled upon a podcast with him and his co-host, Robert Rose, years ago, back when I was in a sales job driving, let's just say 2 hours a day each way. And honestly, I think they might have kept me alive in my commute just with their banter back and forth. So Joe, it's an honor to have you on today.
Doug, I don't know. I feel bad for you that we were the thing that was keeping you going. I mean, I'm thankful, but it's sort of that's a last ditch effort to find our content. But it's so funny. We're almost celebrating our 400th episode of This Whole Marketing. We've been doing it since 2013. It's really hard to believe.
You know,
I look at all these things and it's like, oh my God, I'm old. Like I did an interview the other day for a college kid. And they said, how long have you been doing this? I said, oh, I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. So that's just where we are.
That's awesome. Well, the one thing I have to give you both credit for, unlike The Sopranos, you guys actually had an ending episode when you decided to shut the show down that I have to say that was probably one of the best ways to end it. But then you guys brought it back in epic fashion. So before we dive in too much, one of my favorite questions to ask any type of content creator is, do you remember your first episode, but you have a unique perspective because you had a first, a last, and then a second one. What were those things like for you in your content journey?
You know, it's interesting. What I remember most is not the first episode of This Old Marketing. It was the call before the first episode. I was in some rental car, driving to some meeting I was supposed to speak at. And I'm just doing an update call with Robert Rose, and we're talking about content marketing. So that was right during the days when Content Marketing World and Content Marketing Institute were just blowing up. And we're just having a chat about what's going on in the industry. And we talked for about an hour. And then I said to him, I'm like, we should have recorded that. Like, that was like, we're just patting ourselves on the back. That was really good. That was some really smart stuff. Why don't we share that with the world? And we're like, does anybody want to listen to us just rant and rave about stuff? And we figured, oh, let's give it a try. And the next week we recorded it. We did that thing, and it took off pretty quickly. And so did that whole thing. And so that would, and honestly, there were no content marketing news shows. There still are 1,000 content marketing podcasts, but there's really no one that sort of covers media and marketing from that perspective. Content marketing with our two silly points of view, I guess that's the way. So I remember the pre-call really well to that one. And then maybe not the last episode that we did, but I remember conversations with Robert. So Robert and I are really good friends. We've been good friends since we met in 2008. But I went on sabbatical in 2018, which is why we stopped the podcast. And our friendship suffered because of that, because we didn't have that hour talking every week. We really are friends. We talk. There's nothing scripted about it outside of the news articles we're going to talk about. And more than anything else, that's why I wanted to get back on. I mean, the podcast is very, very successful. It does really, really well. It supports itself through sponsors, wonderful sponsors. So that's awesome. But having the mandatory hour every week to talk to my friend who's also in content marketing and content creation is a really big deal. So now, even though I'm not, I'm a little bit in content marketing, I'm a little bit in the creator economy, I'm a little bit I do a little bit of everything right now, which is what I want to do. But that I can't see stopping that show now, because that's my week to talk with my friend.
That's incredible. Now, underneath that, there's one thing I've noticed in whether it's business, whether it is content, the power of consistency. How would you say just being super disciplined? Because you both travel, like you guys travel a ton. Sometimes you're speaking, you guys always find a way to get it in. How much did that discipline of consistency help you both in growing an audience and in the growth of your business?
Well, they're tied. The growth of the audience is tied to the growth of the business, and any business today, if you're in content marketing. And my take is, just follow the models. We've emailed about a lot of this stuff as we've gone. First of all, if you don't have anything differentiated to say, That's the one thing. And the second thing is, are you delivering that differentiated message consistently over a long period of time? That's how you build an audience. It's not rocket science. So I know you and I know a lot of smart people that have gone out there and done 3 episodes of a podcast or 4 blog posts or 7 videos. They're not consistent about it. They don't deliver ongoing, and they don't build an audience. So whenever you get somebody that says, I've got this really great idea for fill in the blank, I always say, this is wonderful. I want to support you doing this. Are you going to do this for the next 52 weeks? Like, are you going to commit to that? Because I would say 90% of the people say yes, and 10% of the people actually do it. There's some crazy stat about about podcasting out there that's something like 55% of all podcasts have 3 or less episodes. And I'm like, what? You're like, yeah. So I guess the whole thing about it working is, are you going to deliver this consistent message? So just look at this old marketing. We just got back to our pre-stoppage numbers recently. So we were, let's see, from 2013 to end of 2017, we didn't miss a week. We distributed on Friday morning for every week during that whole period of time. And then we stopped for a year and a half. And then we almost had to start over. And it took us 2 years just to get back to those numbers. I'll give you another example, because I've been working on, we just sold our company. So I've been working on a lot of that. I haven't been as diligent with posting on LinkedIn, which I was posting every day. And LinkedIn is absolutely slamming me with no visibility, because instead of posting 5 days a week like I was doing for the last year, I was posting Monday and then Wednesday and Thursday maybe, and I can see the numbers. So if you want to build an audience, you have to deliver consistently. And that's the whole thing about corporate content marketing is so funny to me, because when I talk to an enterprise marketer, they're like, what's the secret? And I'm like, deliver consistently. Most of your stuff is campaigns. You'll do something for 6 months or 9 months, and then you'll stop. It's like, there's nothing that's going to hurt a relationship with somebody than just stop sending them something that they think is, that you thought was valuable, that they thought was valuable. And then you're like, no, you're not important anymore. We're going to stop. And let alone the algorithms will hurt you, because you have to deliver consistently. So it goes hand in hand. I mean, Content Marketing Institute became what it was because I blogged 5 times a week for 3 years and got that thing up to 10,000 subscribers, which it's now. I mean, we don't own the company anymore, but they're like 250,000 subscribers because they deliver every day when they say they're going to deliver. Mr. Beast does the same thing. Morning Brew does the same thing. New York Times does the same thing. I mean, it's really easy to see that model work.
It's funny. I see a lot of people, they have like FOMO and they look at these big brands like a Mr. Beast, for example. I think if you have anyone who's a young kid or teen or even early 20s now, they're like, oh, I want to be Mr. Beast. But what I think they ignore is the 10 years of effort that they put into building this brand. And it's one lesson I have learned from you is the power of focusing on building an audience first and then monetizing. How can brands make the shift between campaign thinking and audience building?
Generally how it works. And I mean, it's all different, as you know. Everyone has their own culture and how you deal with it. But I've been inside a lot of companies, and you sort of have to treat it like an experimental project if you're not used to it. Because when you go into most large consumer B2B enterprises, they're very campaign focused. What's the product? What's the theme? Where's the budget going? What new products do we have to sell this year? Where's the CEO's focus? Where's the CMO's focus? So you're doing all that stuff. And then all the content you create is just, oh, we need this webinar. We need this report. So they're all in very short period of time around this thing that lasts 6 to 9 months. So you almost have to say, and this is where I'll sit them down, and I've had a lot of these heart-to-heart conversations, and I'm like, if you don't plan for this to go 12 to 18 months and consistently deliver, don't do it. Like, just don't start, because you get to 12 months, you're just getting started. You get to 18 months, we don't know yet. You're still working out your messaging. You're still figuring out the pain points of your audience before you get there. A lot of times it takes 2 years, 3 years. But once you get to that point, then your hockey stick growth. But you got to make it through the jungle to get to that point. So I almost always say, look, where can this little project be protected for a while outside of the current culture and all the things that you're doing? And sometimes you can figure that out. You set it up as a pilot program. You let everyone know that this needs to go on for a couple of years, and we're going to do an experiment. And then people are sort of okay with it. If you're not saying you don't put it out there and say, we're going to have to build an audience of 100,000 people by this point. You might have those internal metrics that you want, but please don't tell anybody. Please keep it to yourself, because then somebody will get expectations that are not correct and you'll get it killed down the road. So when I talk to a marketer and they say, how can I know that how can I prove success down the road? And I say, if you get to 12 months to 18 months, you'll probably be successful, but 95% don't make it that long. So whatever you need to do to protect it, and in a lot of cases, for anybody listening who wants like a little tip, you get your little champion group together and everybody sort of works together and do your weekly updates. Like what's working, what's some qualitative information that's working, what is some quantitative information that's working. If there's somebody that's over that budget that's really important that needs to know, send them a little weekly care package about what you're doing, but also about what's going on with your competitors, what they're doing. Because a lot of content marketing's growth is because of fear. Because, we're missing out, we're not getting found in search. Somebody's typed something in the chat GPT and we're not found. All those things have to do with the stories you tell and the stories that are found. So making sure that those people that are responsible for the budgets, that they need to know that. But anyone else that can affect that, I would probably hold it close to yourself until you know for sure you got a winner.
Now, one of the things you mentioned was AI, which we'll come back to. But the thing that instantly drew me to you and Content Marketing Institute originally was the sense of community that you had built adjacent to the show. And you've done it again with the Tilt and the Creator Economy Expo. How important a role does community start to play in the growth of a show, the growth of a brand?
Well, it's critical. I would say if you want to build community, first build audience. First, do the building blocks so that you have a winning content product. And then once you have all those things figured out, how are you going to get your audience involved? It's not rocket science. So at Content Marketing Institute, we'd say, all right, who in our audience has a really good story to tell, and let's get them on our blog. And we would reach out to them. And a really good way to build community is to get them involved in your product. And you see that with things like Morning Brew, where they feature certain people and certain brands. That's how they get sponsors that way. You see that with YouTubers that'll bring other YouTubers on their shows, and they all grow together. And they share listener questions or what. So so how do you get them involved? And we try to do with this old marketing. We read reader questions. We have voicemails. When we get together at Content Marketing World, we try to do meetups with people who are listeners. Anytime that you can get them more involved, and it doesn't take much. You just have to plan for it. So that's where I think most content marketing initiatives or media initiatives might go wrong, because then if you're just focused on audience, after a certain period of time, you're going to stagnate and plateau, and you have to have your customers or your audience start to help build that. And then that builds a community. So where can you get them talking to each other? Where can you help them with their jobs, with their lives, make them into rock stars, superstars? And that works really well, because when they start to build their own audiences, then they start pointing everything back at you, and everything just works great. There's nothing better to help a community grow than something in person. So that's why it really helped the Tilt when we launched Creator Economy Expo, to get the core super fans that were subscribers to the Tilt newsletter, to get them all in person. It helped with Content Marketing Institute to help those super fans get together at Content Marketing World, and to just provide the place. And once you provide the place, it sort of happens on its own.
Now, speaking of place, you've had a pretty crazy entrepreneurial journey, going from publishing to content marketing, and now you're coming full circle back again with helping people and reinventing the publishing model. Can you talk a little bit about that journey and kind of where you're headed next?
So Content Marketing Institute was an amazing success, and we got, in a lot of ways, we got lucky because we went out there early talking about this content marketing game. And in 2010 and 11, everybody wanted a piece of content marketing, and we were there. And we were there for 3 years doing the work, and it took off, and it was wonderful. We had a great community and a great team, and that was tremendous. And then I said, okay, I did that. I want to try something else. Took the sabbatical and started writing novels, and I'm back to doing that now. So it's because I'm trying to, one, challenge myself to do things I'm uncomfortable doing. And at the same time, can I do something that's going to help the world in some way, some crazy way? Not that a mystery novel is necessarily going to do that, but I'm trying to do things a little bit different. So that was working really well until the book was launched on March 8th of 2020. And the week after that, the world shut down. And for whatever reason, I got into this thing called creator economy. And I really pretty much duplicated the model of Content Marketing Institute. I built the news, instead of a blog, I built the newsletter with a wonderful team. We added on an event, Creator Economy Expo, that was working really, really well. And I'm still involved in those things, and I'm still passionate about helping content creators build their business models. As you know, in 2015 and then again in 2021, I wrote Content Inc. With apologies to Robert Rose and Brian Piper, Content Inc. is my favorite book because I really believe that if you're a content creator, you need a business model. That's your business model. So I did that, got back into this. And then I said, okay, well, Lulu came along, great sponsor of ours. We ended up selling the Tilton Creator Economy Expo to them. And one of the reasons why I sold that off is I did that model. I did that with CFI. I did it again there. And I'm like, okay, I want to do something differently. And kind of a new passion of mine. And I've been talking about this be careful with rented land thing for a long time, probably since 2010. I'm like, social media was born, and I'm like, don't build your content house on rented land because you're not building an asset. They control the pipes. They can turn you off at any moment. They could change the algorithm at any moment. Just be careful. I'm not saying you shouldn't be there. I'm just saying be careful. It's tough to build a really good content business model and have all your stuff controlled by some other distribution entity. So as I got involved with Lulu, as they purchased this thing, we came up with this idea for Tilt Publishing. And I'm like, okay, how can we really make something that is going to help content creators, like really do this? And I've always thought that books were part of the three-legged stool. For me, the three-legged stool is, one, you need a place that is home for your content, that is the leading thing in the world about what you're talking about. So is it a blog? Is it a podcast? Is it a YouTube channel? Whatever, online. So the leading online destination. Then do you have the book that says that you're the expert, that you're a credible expert in the thing? So you have the online destination, then you have the book. Then over here, what brings it all together are speaking opportunities, like me talking with you on this podcast right now, or going to speak at Content Marketing World or Marketing Pros B2B, whatever. Those are the three legs. So if I believe this book's such an important part, the second leg of this tool, but yet most authors are giving all their power up to an entity like Amazon. Now, I'm not an Amazon hater. Amazon is wonderful. I've made lots of money and lots of discovery with Amazon. So I'm not going to totally say we should not use Amazon. What I am saying is, I think there's a better mousetrap for content creators than just saying, oh, I'm going to create this amazing book, and then I'm going to be beholden to Amazon to put it up there and sell. And when I do that, I'm not going to get any of my customer data when I do that. And I'm going to sacrifice about 50% of profit when I do it. I'm like, do we have to do that? And here's what kills me, Doug, is that you get an author, an accomplished author that has a really good audience. And instead of selling direct to that audience and saying, go to my website, buy my book here so I can get your data and I can build a better relationship with you and I can make more money and you're going to support me doing that, I'm going to send them all to Amazon where I don't know who's going to buy, what they're going to buy. I'm going to get this thing that says I sold 1 unit or 2 units. And I'm going to get this royalty card that is like, really? I got $2 for that, or I got $3 for that. I worked really hard to put this thing together. It's not that you shouldn't use Amazon for discovery. I'm all for that from a discovery standpoint, but please don't send your current audience to a big tech company that doesn't need any more power than they already have. Long story short, Doug, that's why we created Tilt Publishing, because we're trying to create an imprint and a publishing service specifically for content creators so they can sell direct. And by the way, shorten the process to publishing. I've been a McGraw-Hill author for over a decade now, and I love McGraw-Hill. But if your proposal gets accepted by McGraw-Hill and they're going to publish your book, you're lucky if you get your book out in a year. That's too long. Yep. That's too long. You get a finished manuscript, you should be 2 months at maximum, maybe 2.5 months, and get that book out there. We got to move really, really fast. And if you print on demand with somebody like Lulu, you can change it at any time. You don't have to do your 75,000 word book. You could do a 35,000 word book. You could package it with an ebook. You could package it with a webinar. You could package it with a subscriber only podcast, whatever. You could do lots of things. So I think we just need to be smarter about it. Most authors don't know about this. And so now I'm doing a new project, Doug. My new project is kind of figuring out how we can get these creators publishing material quicker to market. And when they do that, get more data so the business model works a little bit better and make more money at the same time.
I absolutely love that, because even when I did my book, it was kind of limited on how you could do the launch. And I think so many, we'll just call them infopreneurs or, those speakers, they have so much value to give beyond the book, like whether it's the workbooks, the videos, the complementary things. And there hadn't been, till we talked, a platform where I could share the entire experience. Like I can accelerate that reader's journey into something that makes an impact much, much faster. I'm super excited and funny. I didn't know you were doing this, so I'm super pumped because I have another book in the works and I've been looking for.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So
perfect.
it's interesting. Like the Tilt, we're basically set up like a media company. We never really launched a product outside of Creator Economy Expo. So I thought that this was a really great match because it's very much in line with our mission, which is to help content creators become content entrepreneurs. And if you do not have access to your data, it is very difficult to become a content entrepreneur, an entrepreneur of any kind. I would say, like, how do you build an asset? If you build an asset, you have to control the data and the distribution. So if you're sending everything off to Amazon, you're not going to control the data or the distribution. So let's just be smarter about it. We'll see how it goes. We're getting some really good vibes from the community about it, that we're on the right track. We're sort of learning what to offer. And then in January, we're going to launch sort of a standard product and then an enhanced product for like total hands-on and partially hands-on to get your book published. And we'll see how it goes. We'd love to publish your book and go from there. And I think that the audience is ready for a product like this.
100%. I think the world needs a product like this.
We'll take our audience first. We'll start with our audience and then we'll move out. We'll see how it goes.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of making an impact, I'm pretty biased when it comes to entrepreneurs and their ability to solve problems. I'm getting ready for a golf trip myself. We're playing 36 holes a day for 4 days. I was like, man, awesome. This is going to be sore. But then I remember every year hearing about you playing 100 holes of golf to support the Orange Effect. So there's 2 things I'd love to know. One, I do want to hear about and let the audience know about the Orange Effect Foundation. And 2, what an entrepreneurial journey led to that enabled your ability to give back, and how can others leverage being an entrepreneur and building an audience to do more than just monetize it, but find ways to make impacts?
Sure. I'll answer it best I can. First of all, Orange Effect Foundation, our mission is for kids and families who need speech therapy and speech technology equipment and can't afford it. That's why the Orange Effect was created in the first place. So we were sort of a funder of last resort. If a family has a child who's nonverbal, who has trouble communicating, that really desperately needs speech therapy, they have no insurance and no out-of-pocket money to do it, they can come to us, they can fill out an application, and we can send those funds directly to the speech therapist to make that happen. We've got 389 grants out to kids in 39 states right now. We're really proud of what we've done. We started it in sort of as a call. We started as a golf outing in 2007. We became a 501c3 in 2014. We've got a wonderful board, a wonderful community that's helping to do this. I wish we could do more, and we're obviously trying to do as much as we can. The more that I find that it just doesn't get a lot of attention. You don't realize that when there's a family who has a child who really desperately needs speech therapy, and it does early intervention makes all the difference. But if they need to pay for groceries and they need to pay the rent or the house payment, they're going to pay the rent and the house payment, and they can't get the kid speech therapy. And it is a tragedy. And there's lots of tragedies out there, but this is the one that we're focusing on right now that we think we can actually do something about it. My oldest child was born in 2001, and for the first 3 years had maybe a handful of words, grunts more than anything else, was diagnosed on the autism spectrum, and it was aggressive speech and play therapy that made it possible that my oldest is going to be graduating college this year with a degree in cybersecurity. And the reason why that happened is because of early intervention speech therapy. So it is really important and it works. So that's sort of why I'm passionate about it. As for the business side, I sat down. I have a lot of wonderful mentors in my life, and I've sat down with a few that said, when you launch a business, in a lot of cases, it becomes about you. You're selling, you're creating the content, you're out there trying to make it rain. It's you, and you start to believe sometimes in your own BS as you go forward. And a lot of these mentors said, hey, you have to make sure that if you're launching a business, you've got part of this thing that has nothing to do with you. Like, where can you give your time, your treasure, your talent to something that's outside of what you're doing? And we launched the business. It's not a coincidence that when we launched the business in April of 2007, that's when I left my corporate job. And in August of 2007 was our first golf outing. And all those funds went to Easter Seal Speech Therapy. And before we created our own 501c3. So that's what I tell entrepreneurs. It's like, get a thing, get a purpose or a passion that is not about you, that you can help a community, help a cause, help a kid, help a family, whatever the case is. And I'm not going to lie. You never do it because you want to grow your business. Like, I would never say you do it because that's a good business move. No, don't do that. But it does. It absolutely does. I can point to so many opportunities that would not have happened because I was not a part of this other community for Orange Effect Foundation. It's just, and by the way, I love for whether it's golfing 100 holes and seeing those people and there's 30 of us, not really roughing it, but doing 100 holes a day and raising a ton of money for a great cause, or when we get our Golf for Autism together every year and I see those wonderful people that are giving up their golf, and we're having a great time, of course, but we're giving to a great cause and they know it. And they all come out in their orange, like I'm wearing right now, and we do our thing. So it means a lot. I would just recommend, if you're an entrepreneur listening to this and you don't have something like that, I would sit down with your significant other, sit down with your family, talk about the things you can make impact with. Our kids were really, really involved when they were growing up in this organization. And I have a feeling that's going to pay off for them when they become full-fledged adults.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've seen some of the fastest growing entrepreneurs I've talked to. The bigger things they latch onto, you can see that passion just gives them that extra 10% in business. And I honestly believe that's why they're successful. It's not because they wanted to make the money in the business. They were successful, but this bigger thing is what pulled the rest through.
It's amazing. Yeah. And you'd hate to think, like, I really do believe in my heart that most entrepreneurs that do that go into the nonprofit side or the cause side, they're not doing it because this is going to help my business. Maybe some are. I'm sure there's a few out there, but most of the people that I've met over the years, their stories are amazing. Something happened to them or a family member or whatever the case is, and they really got involved. And that's the thing they're excited about talking about. Like, yeah, we could talk about content marketing and creator economy all day long, but if you're saying where can we make the most impact, I'm probably going to talk about speech therapy. I'm probably going to talk about, Max, who we just delivered funding for a year for speech therapy, who's 3 years old in Brooklyn, New York, that if somebody out there in the community didn't fund Orange Effect, we wouldn't be able to deliver that kid with speech therapy. And now I know that Max has a chance to just be as normal as Max wants to be. And that's all we could ask, right?
Mm-hmm. What's funny, it's interesting that whether it's coincidental, or by circumstance, the fact that you went into content and you're leveraging somewhat of a superpower to enable that in others now, I don't think it's a complete coincidence, but I think that passion is the real piece carrying everything through. And I think the interesting thing to me about entrepreneurs is when they can take that thing that they've been building and just enable it in other people. That's the positive change I see. And I see it more often than not in just the interest of goodwill than I do any benefit. I find at the core, and I could just be overly optimistic, could be the Canadian in me. I think entrepreneurs just want to see a better world for the most part.
Well, I hope you're right. I think you are right. And I'm an optimist too. So I believe that's the case, because at the end of the day, it's like, oh, okay, great. I write a couple books. I'm probably most happy with what I've done personally when I get a note from somebody that said, "Oh my God, Content Inc., the book changed my career," or This Old Marketing Podcast, or Content Marketing World, or whatever it is. I want to see. I know if they're being helped in their career, it's helping their family, then they are able to do more in the world. That whole pay it forward mindset. But when you can see I've seen, we've been around long enough where we're getting videos where I got a video from one of our Orange Effect kids when they were 2 years old or 3 years old. And now I see them talking at 10, and you're like, oh my God, that's amazing. It's a miracle. I can see a miracle happen.
Yeah.
And that's pretty special.
That's incredibly fulfilling. Now, before we get to the final question, there is one thing I want to talk about: authenticity, and kind of in theme with what we're just talking about now. How can people handle remaining authentic with the influx of AI and its proliferation into content?
So, well, let's just talk about AI first. There's a lot of different ways to look at it, whether you're thinking about it's going to be the end of the world in 5 years as AI takes over, or if you're just looking at it as a writing tool. For content creation right now, and this is right now because in 2 days this conversation would need to change. I would stress upon anybody using any AI tools not to have it create content for you. We've already seen the case studies of the news services running AI where they're running similar content across all the world with similar headlines, because the AI is taking the same things, and it's not obviously original. Can you use AI as a mini assistant to help you with topics, ideation, things like that? Absolutely. That's great. If you can use it for those things, use it for those things. It doesn't mean that you're not being any more or less creative. You're just using a new tool. And I look at it similar to the way I stopped using a typewriter, and I'm using Microsoft Word now, or Google or Google Sheets for Excel. Whatever the case is, it's a productivity tool. But don't go in there and say, write me 3 paragraphs or on for my next chapter of my mystery novel, and here's the first one, and go in. I'm totally against that. That's going to be done, and it's already being done. And my prediction was, if you've been listening to This Old Marketing, I think that in 5 years, 95% of the content out there is going to be done by robots. It just is. Half the content out there already is. We just don't think about it that way. So it's going to go that direction. So how can you stand out? You have original thoughts. You have original thinking. Use all the tools to help you get there. Make sure that whatever you put out there is yours. That's all I'm saying. And the great part is, maybe because of all this AI stuff going on, maybe if you really lean into it and really lean into your point of view and the way that you write, it's going to be better for you. And I found this out and this is going back, but my first book with Newt Barrett, Get Content, Get Customers, I wouldn't call it a bland book, but we sort of watered it down so it didn't have a lot of point of view going on. We were here's a case study and here's what content marketing is and the whole thing. And by the time I got to Content Inc. in 2015, I had learned that the more that I lean into me and my stories, my learnings and my failures, and the more lean into my style of writing, the better it was, and the more people appreciated that. And so that's where, Robert and I talk about the podcast all the time. I think we've had more success lately because we share more stuff, not about us. That's helpful. I mean, we're not going to go in there and bitch about something going on that nobody cares about. But if we're talking about something going on in the industry and we're really passionate about it, that only helps what you're doing. So I guess that's my take is that you have lots of choices to create content and things to help you. Use those tools in a way that doesn't take away your point of view, that doesn't take away your original voice. And you probably will do really well if you abide by the rules we talked about at the beginning of the whole thing is find your content tilt. Where's that differentiation that you can rise above all the content clutter and then deliver consistently in one way, your blog, podcast, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is, over a long period of time, and you'll build an audience and be successful.
And ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you firsthand, just reading and applying the lessons in Content Inc. It's what led to my book, which is over here, a TED Talk, an agency, and multiple consulting contracts. Like, it works. Read it, apply it. Listen to the podcast, This Old Marketing. If anything, just the witty banner is entertaining. So if you get a long commute, it'll keep you awake and entertained. Joe, the last question I have for you is, where do you see the future of the creator economy going? And what, if there was one thing businesses should be focusing on for the next, say, 3 years, because I'm a big proponent of the long game. Sure. What should it be?
Wow. Boy, I've been wrong so many, as you know, I've been wrong so many times with my predictions. You're going to have a lot of little media companies that are run by creators. I think this is a good thing to fill in the gaps of all these new niches and evolving niches that are happening. And that's great. That's great for a lot of people. It's tough in a way where so many people are only getting their information from a few different sources, and we all used to get the same information. So we also think about the same about things. So now we're all thinking differently because we're getting our information from different sources. So there's a positive and negative to that whole thing. So it's going to go crazy. It's going to continue to blossom. There's so many amazing creator tools. If you are at all interested in doing this, there's a huge opportunity. You don't have to have an audience of 1 million or even 10,000 to be successful. You can become the leading expert in something niche. And that's maybe what I love most about it, is because anybody can become a content entrepreneur today with a phone. That's all they need. You don't have to have a large infrastructure. And so that's very exciting. Even our audience, the average for the tilt, we just did a research study, and we know that they're averaging about $100,000 in US revenue per year, which is not bad for very little overhead. I mean, that's a good living. And those are people that have been doing it for about 3 years. So, I mean, there's a lot of possibility there. I think for companies, I'm in this thing right now where I would lean into this idea of not just creating your own content as content marketing, like corporate content marketing, but lean into creators inside and outside your organization. So I could see you bringing on somebody to just run a show. Like how can you fund all these creators around you and do the things that you need to do? It's very hard from a corporate side. We talked about some of the challenges already to say, oh, okay, we're going to do the blog and we're going to do the podcast and we're going to do the TikTok and we're going to do the YouTube and have it be really authentic and integrated. And you're like, oh my God, it's very difficult. But if you know that you want to be the leading expert in AI for food processing, I'm just making this thing up, and that your company needs to do that, it may be a lot easier for you to go out there, acquire an influencer, or find somebody in your organization and say, your job is to do this podcast. And that's all we want you to do, is just run this podcast and be great at it. You're the host. We're going to share your stuff across our social. You're going to be the guy, the gal, the person, whatever the case is. That's a great thing. And a lot of B2B and B2C companies are doing that. So I think what you're going to see with marketing departments is you're going to do all your marketing stuff. You're going to have your campaign stuff. And then you're going to have an army of creators inside and outside the organization that are going to be telling stories in all these niches that are maybe going to be tied to a loyalty driven thing here, or a community thing here, or a membership thing here, or some product launch over here, or whatever it is. Who knows what it's going to be. So marketing departments are going to get a little crazy because they're not going to look like marketers anymore. They're going to be full-fledged content creators 24/7. And I think ultimately that might be a good thing.
I agree. That'll keep them authentic, back to the originality.
Absolutely. And I think it's scary for a corporate brand to do that a little bit. I mean, IBM's been through a lot of companies have, right? How much power do you give to the individual and let them run with it? But what we've seen is if you really let them go, sometimes it doesn't work out. We know that. But most of the time it does. Let them go, give them the support they need, and they will build that community, because most of the time people like to connect with a person before a brand. So that person can represent your brand and you can give them all the tools to be successful. So
couldn't agree more. Wise words, Joe. This has been an absolute pleasure. We will put links to the book, the Orange Effect Foundation, and where to find you on LinkedIn. The newsletter has unbelievable information. So everybody, make sure you follow Joe. I personally have gotten so much value from him, from Robert Rose, from all the organizations. Joe, it has been a pleasure. Any final words or information that people should be looking for from you?
Oh, geez, I think we covered more than what we would ever want. My whole thing was, it's funny. I believe that everyone in marketing, so you have a lot of marketing people listening to this, should have some little side thing that they're building an audience around. I think it's good for the soul, but it's also good for your career. So now I just did a talk for a bunch of college kids, and the number one question is, what can I do now to get a job? And I said, well, if you want to get a job and not like start a business, either way, it's like, if you can learn how to build an audience, you can identify your content, build that audience wherever it is. Doesn't matter what. But if you then go into your employer and say, look at what I did, I have 100 people subscribed to this thing, you'll get a job. Mm-hmm. And so I just feel that every marketer should have that thing. And we learn some things about ourselves when we do it. So that would be my little motivational plug. To be the creator you should be, whatever it is, catching butterflies, photography, cooking. I don't care what it is. Doesn't matter. Just go ahead and do it. You'll love it. You'll love it.
We have done that as a recruiting tool. Like, we inspire people in our agency, like, hey, work on a side project, take these skills you're learning here, do them for something you benefit from. They actually hone the skill faster and bring more value back to us. It is so true. Genius advice. So true. Perfect. Beautiful. Well, thank you for having me. This was so much fun. This was fun. I love it. Thank you so much. And everybody, make sure you follow the GOAT Marketing Show, Joe Pulizzi. Until next week, everybody have an awesome week.